What's good, you guys? Cass back with another video. It's about that time of year. Every 2 years, pretty much like clockwork, people start talking about the latest Nvidia graphics cards. This one's going to be an interesting year, mainly because AMD has basically forfeited the high end, which I think was a very bad idea. I could make a video on that in the future, but I think the more interesting topic is how Nvidia is going to respond and further indoctrinate their customer base into spending more money. I gotta as evil as you think Nvidia is for this, you got to tip your hat to them because they are some absolute masterminds with how they've convinced more people to spend more money than they need to over the course of the past 6 or so years. But let's go ahead and get into this one. We're talking about some leaks and rumors for the new 50,000 series of graphics cards. I don't normally talk about leaks and rumors. I personally think they're not healthy for people to focus on for this specific reason. But this here is pretty interesting. So let's go ahead and get into it. If you look at the screen right now, you'll see the comparison between the 5080 and the 5090. Essentially, you're getting half of the performance compared to what the 5090 is with the 5080 class graphics card. And a lot of people, they feel a little bit jaded by this. They don't really like this, and they feel that they deserve more. And that's exactly what I want to talk about here, because I think that sort of mindset is exactly what Nvidia has been trying to breed into its customer base to convince them to spend more money. So let's get into this. Now, I'm not going to go into much detail on the specs and everything. You can speculate on that yourself. I don't really think it's that important. I don't think most gamers, even the enthusiasts, really care about the specs. They don't really care about the name. All they really care about is what is considered best effort, I think is the best way to describe it. They want to be able to have access to Nvidia's best effort graphics card, best effort node, best effort technology for the price point that they are used to paying for. If we go back to what most people will consider the best generation of graphics cards, the 1080 Ti, it's not simply because of its really good power draw or its really good performance. Obviously, its performance was good, but I think it's the simple fact that it was leaps and bounds better compared to what everything else on the market, and it was for a price that people could afford. Truly, next level, next generation gaming for a price that most people could afford. And there was a higher end graphics card, the Titan XP, which had 2 more gigabytes of VRAM and a higher bandwidth. But in real world scenarios, at least in gaming scenarios, you weren't really seeing anything more than maybe a single digit performance improvements, if that. If you really wanted to take advantage of that, Titan XP, you had to water cool it, which costs even more money on top of a $2,000 graphics card compared to a $700 graphics card. You pretty much were better off buying an OC version of the 1080 Ti and enjoying the better cooling and the overclocked performance compared to trying to get the latest and greatest from Nvidia. Well, nowadays that isn't necessarily the case. I'll go in and make a comparison with cars. The 1080 Ti to the Titan XP was like the SL55 from 2003 to 2005, give or take, compared to the SL65 on the R230 chassis. I'll go ahead and show a picture here. Now, on paper and in real life, the SL65 was a more expensive, basically better version, the highest trim model performance version of the SL model that was available at the time. However, most people would argue that the SL55 was the better buy, and even today, a lot of people would probably prefer the SL55 over the SL65. Now, why is that? Well, for the simple reason that, the SL65 was faster, but not by much. You're going to get relatively the same kind of feel out of the car. The SL55, just based on being supercharged versus turbocharged, felt more raw, more kick in the gut, even though that the SL65 had more torque and more horsepower compared to the SL55. It's just the feel was different. The exhaust note, you have a V8 supercharged with headers versus a kind of muted V12 on the SL65, so the exhaust sounded better on the SL55. It was lighter weight, and all the other features on the R230 chassis were essentially the same. So the retractable hardtop, the ABC suspension, the same styling on the inside, essentially the same styling on the outside. It's a little trim package difference, but not a huge thing. Essentially, a lot of people couldn't really justify purchasing the SL65 unless you just really wanted to have the highest end. But most people nowadays, even with you tack on the modifications, aftermarket, most people would say the SL55 is a better buy for a performance sports car for Mercedes from this era compared to the SL65, especially when you consider the price point difference between these two model of cars. With this new release, the 50 series, it's more so like the CLK 55 AMG, the W208 chassis, compared to the CLK GTR. These are not necessarily in any way, shape, or form, not even necessarily, these just simply are not the same car. They share the same name, they share similar styling to an extent, But you have like a road-going economy-style sports car that was kind of mid-tier price points at the time versus literally one of the top 5 supercars ever made known to man. I would put like the Carrera GT up there or the 918 from Porsche. I would put the McLaren F1 up there, the Pagani Zonda, um, the CLK GTR, and then like the Bugatti. There's some other ones in there, the Veyron specifically. But those are the ones I personally would put up there. Oh, maybe the F40 instead of the Bugatti. I'm getting off topic. Anyways, it was in a completely different class, on a completely different planet compared to the CLK 55 AMG. Now, most people didn't need more than a CLK 55 AMG. It was still a very fast car for its time. Had a lot of technology, very good ride quality, the V8 growl that most people wanted, nice interior, really good sports car to buy, but it just wasn't a supercar. I think the 5080 is going to be like, $1,000. And let me tell you this, like, let's just say for sake of the argument, a 4090 right now was to release on Newegg for $1,000. Let's say this is like a custom model by Asus, and they had fixed the melting power connector and put a custom BIOS on there that made the power draw super, super like low. So you have a more efficient card, and you have like lower power draw, no melted connectors, and it's $1,000. Everyone will go out and buy this card. It would be hailed as the best 4090 on the market, and everyone would say it's a great buy. That's essentially what you're going to get 6 months from now in the 5080. It's going to be 4090 level of performance. It's going to be lower power draw. It's going to be cheaper. This shouldn't have the melting connector issue, hopefully. Fingers crossed on that. But it's essentially going to be a 4090 for $1,000. Now, people would be excited for that now, but that's only because the 4090 is considered the best on the market. There's nothing better than the 4090, so getting that for $1,000 is what people want. By the time the 5080 comes out, even though it will be faster than the 4090, they don't care because it's not the fastest thing on the market. And you could say that's kind of like a flawed mindset. Does 6 months really make that huge of a difference between two products that will essentially perform the exact same, but they'll get significantly like different perspectives on how good they are? That just goes to how crazy of a masterclass Nvidia has done with indoctrinating their gamers into spending more money. And in all honesty, I really can't be mad at them. They're selling these nodes to AI partners and the enterprise companies on their Blackwell GPUs that are not for consumers for crazy amounts of money. So the fact that they're able to use their largest nodes to make this crazy amount of money that's like backlogged, why would they sell that same size chip to a consumer for under $1,000? The true going price of Nvidia's best chip is well over $2,000, if I'm being completely honest with you, just because there's more players on the market and there's more things this thing can do compared to what GPUs were able to do 6 to 10 years ago. So we really can't make that comparison. We're never going to return back to the 1080 Ti days. It's just inevitable. So they're basically trying to convince gamers that since you don't have the fastest like you used to, you need to spend $2,000. And in all honesty, that's a good business practice because they can either sell this for $2,000 or they could sell this for like $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 to their partners in a different platform. Since it's probably a closer size node. So the fact that they're using a smaller die for a relatively same performance of what we have now, except more power efficient and all that other kind of stuff, and it'll have some new feature that isn't on the current series. You could say it's like kind of generous for them to do that, but in all honesty, it's not, because even with the 5080, they're probably going to figure out some way to make the scarcity of it relatively low. Even though they can pump these things out like hotcakes, smaller die, they won't, because they want to make the price be artificially inflated to increase their value and make them more scarce. So then you'll eventually start seeing 5080s go for like $1,400 because they keep getting sold out very, very quickly. It's just inevitable, and like I said, kind of sucks to be the gamer, but Nvidia just got they got us tied, bro. There's really not much we can do to compete. So this is a PSA. Get your money up, save your pennies right now if you want to get the 5090. And in all honesty, guys, you'll probably have to settle for a 5080. I say settle, which is kind of like a crazy mindset to think of, because I think anyone that had a 5080 with a 9800X 3D, in February of next year, they probably will be good for the foreseeable future. 60 gigabytes of VRAM is good enough, or it's more than enough actually, for the majority of games out there at the resolutions people are playing at. If you need 32 gigabytes of VRAM, GDR7 VRAM, which you don't. You really don't, unless you're playing like some crazy 8K TV, which most people aren't. I think you should just settle for the 5080 and just change your mindset to that. Kind of sucks to think of it that way, but that's just the way it's going to be. So yeah, I think the 5080 is going to be like $1,000, and then the 5090 will be anywhere from $1,800 to $2,000. Double the price for double the performance, which makes sense. You know, it does make sense to double the price for double the performance, but it's the simple fact that it's not the highest end, the best effort from Nvidia for the price that we want, that is going to bother gamers. So just a little quick video. Hope that made sense, and yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, that's all I got. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next video.